It's now clear that the Trump administration is going to begin targeting permanent residents. Marco Rubio just posted something on X or some social media platform saying green card holders or permanent residents do not have an absolute right to live in the US. I'm probably butchering this quote and paraphrasing at the very least. But the question becomes, do permanent residents have a right to enter the US? And I'm curious to see how Trump's new proposed travel bans and all of this stuff with permanent residents being deported is going to play out in the courts. I'm curious to see what kind of protections we can expect moving forward for permanent residents. But let's just go through a couple scenarios here for permanent residents who are watching this video who want to protect themselves. So I'm going to break this video up into like 2 or 3 different sections. The first section is what to do as a permanent resident, as a green card holder when you're re-entering the United States. So let's say you are not inadmissible, which means you have no criminal history and you didn't spend more than 1 year outside of the US continuously. There's no argument that you've abandoned your residency. You're permanently living in the US, you maintain a US address, you have no criminal history, and you travel outside of the US and are trying to come back. And when you come back, the customs officer looks you up and down and says, "Come with me." And he walks you into a back room. That back room is referred to as secondary inspection. And there's a couple ways this can play out, but there's only really one thing you need to know. Do not sign Form I-407. Form I-407 is to voluntarily abandon your residency. And customs officers, sometimes in good faith, say misleading things like, listen, you've been outside of the US for a while. It's my determination that you've abandoned your residency, or whatever they say, it doesn't matter. You should sign this form I-407, go back to your home country, go to the consulate, get a new green card, and enter the US. You should definitely not do that. And I recently released a video about someone who followed my advice, did not do that, and is able to fix their abandonment of their green card from within the US. They don't need to do it from outside of the US. And by the way, that person is from a country for which Trump's new travel ban is going to restrict entry. So I'm really glad they followed my advice, because now they're in the US, fixing their deficient green card, getting a new green card through a new adjustment of status process. Meanwhile, if they tried to do it from outside of the US, they would have been restricted from entering due to Trump's new proposed travel bans. Now, one thing to keep in mind, if you are actually deportable and you refuse to sign Form I-407, which I would still recommend, speak to an attorney before you actually enter the US in this scenario, but I would still always recommend do not sign Form I-407 until you have at least spoken with an attorney. So what could happen is Customs and Border Protection can transfer you to ICE, they could detain you and place you into removal proceedings. And usually when you're detained in this context, it's temporary and you'll be released with a notice to appear in immigration court. And then you need to get a lawyer and defend yourself in immigration court. But I still say that's usually always better than signing Form I-407 and trying to fix this problem from outside of the US. Because once you're outside of the US, there's no guarantee that you're going to ever come back into the US legally. Now, if you're really scared about what I just described, don't travel. As a permanent resident, you have a right to re-enter the US. This right is pretty clear from past precedent, but I wouldn't be surprised if these policies change. And besides, even when Trump enacted his first 2 travel bans in 2017, which were deemed to be illegal, hundreds of permanent residents were still turned away and denied entry into the US. The damage was already done. Yes, the Trump administration later had to allow all those people back into the US, but you know, it's not fun being put back on a repatriation flight to your home country, having to pay for more travel expenses, having to explain to your loved ones or your employer why you weren't able to show up to work and why you shouldn't be terminated from your employment. There are still real consequences to being denied entry, even if the Trump administration does it unlawfully. So just keep that in mind. For permanent residents who are physically in the US and have no plans on traveling during the next 4 years, look, I know it's hard to see this, but you're probably fine. there's probably minimal or no risk to you living in the United States. These examples we're seeing on the news of, like, for example, that Columbia student who was demonstrating on behalf of Palestine and who the government is now trying to deport as not being in the best interest of the United States, or for offering some sort of endorsement or support for a terrorist group. Yes, that is happening. That's a real concern. Immigration attorneys are shocked that this is actually happening. Those provisions of the Immigration and Nationality Act do actually exist, which gives the Trump administration an absurd amount of power over permanent residents. But if you look at the actual statistics, things like this are very rare. I do expect things like this to begin picking up. I do expect more permanent residents to be facing legal challenges to their right to live in the United States. But for now, just keep in mind that this is happening to far less than 1% of the permanent residents who are in the US. If you're concerned about this, keep a low profile. Maybe try avoiding posting on social media for the next 4 years while our free speech is under attack. I mean, take prudent measures. I don't know what else to say. Permanent residents have the right to live in the US, but the Trump administration is pushing that to its absolute limits. So for now, tread lightly, be careful, don't take unnecessary risks, behave prudently. Remember, you are not a US citizen yet. All of the rights and privileges that are afforded to US citizens are uncertain for permanent residents. There are court cases explaining which rights apply to permanent residents as well, but the Trump administration is trying very hard to attack those. So even for US citizens, I would say your rights and privileges are under attack. It's become clear to me that you only really have rights and privileges if you can afford to defend those rights and privileges. So the wealthy have rights and privileges, and I'm referring to US citizens right now. So this is going on a bit of a tangent. I would just say, as permanent residents, generally speaking, you're safe in the United States. Don't take unnecessary risk. Try not to travel, because traveling is one point where you could be put under extreme scrutiny by the customs officer who you encounter when you re-enter the US. If you don't take any risks and you don't travel, you can probably safely assume that your right to live in the US won't be affected. I'll put out more videos on this topic and what things permanent residents should be on the lookout for as more information becomes available. But for now, that's all I've got. If you guys are interested in these topics or learning more about immigration law from an immigration lawyer's perspective, or hearing more about my take on Trump's immigration policies, be sure to subscribe. If you're going through some immigration difficulties yourself, or you want to consult with me about any immigration topic, be sure to schedule a consultation. My information is in the video description below, and I'll see you guys next time for another video.